Over 100 cars circled the Capitol in Hartford. Some got out and socially distanced.
We didn't have any protective gear. We didn't have no facial mask. We had the gloves that we use, which is worker gloves, but those are not the type of gloves you supposed to have to protect your skin.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The AP reports that Puerto Rico's government is refusing to open school cafeterias amid the virus and has not tapped into millions of dollars of federal aid set aside for the island, even as growing numbers of unemployed parents struggle to feed their children in that U.S. territory, where 70% of public school students are poor. I'd agree with all that account, except the term territory. Call it a colony. So people try to reach out in Puerto Rico and help each other, give each other mutual aid. One group there is Makers Against COVID-19 in Puerto Rico. Hashtag MAC19PR. They make masks out of plastic and give them to health workers. The group has a Facebook page. Search for Makers Against COVID-19 in Puerto Rico. 2 weeks ago, we talked about a honkathon in Hartford. Perhaps this protest of lack of supplies for health workers in Puerto Rico should be called a siren-a-thon. May Day in Connecticut saw a big rally for immigrants. Over 100 cars circled the Capitol in Hartford. Some got out and socially distanced. At the same time, there was an online press conference with many speakers. TSVN did screen grabs of the caravan and the press conference speakers. The goal of the action was to press Governor Lamont and the legislature to provide $150 million to aid undocumented immigrants who receive nothing from the federal stimulus and emergency programs. One of the speakers was the wife of a man in ICE detention for 28 months. Another was Connecticut AFL-CIO Union President Sal Luciano. A speaker at the press conference said that the undocumented immigrants in Connecticut paid $400 million in taxes. I looked it up, and sure enough, a study discussed in the Connecticut Post said that undocumented Connecticut workers paid $397 million in federal, state, and local taxes. And that report was printed in 2017. Another report from the Institute of Taxation and Policy that same year said that the share of the near $400 million that went to the Connecticut government and towns and cities was nearly $125 million. Now you may wonder how we can say these people pay taxes if they're not on the books officially. Well, for one thing, they pay sales taxes on things they buy, utilities, gasoline, and such. They pay property taxes directly if they own a house or indirectly as renters. Most undocumented immigrants also have part of their pay deducted for income tax. The best evidence suggests that at least 50% of the undocumented do that because to get a job, they have to use false Social Security or other numbers. So they pay into a fund of which they will never get any benefit. Looked at this way, their request for aid to keep from starving looks extremely reasonable. So what will Governor Lamont's response be? Now for some of the interview I did with Chris Smalls. Smalls worked in an Amazon warehouse and called attention to major lapses in virus safety procedures in that Amazon facility. He was fired, supposedly for failing to maintain quarantine. He led a demonstration outside that facility on May Day. We recorded this the day before. And what was the date when they had this meeting and they said, well, here's the information, but don't panic, people? When was that?
That was March 24th.
March 24th.
That was the last time I worked for Amazon. I left the building. I disagreed with them. I left the building an hour later. When I returned the following days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, March 28th is the day they quarantined me. When I returned the following days, I sat in the cafeteria off the clock on my own free will to tell the employees the truth, that they possibly been exposed to somebody who tested positive. I did that every single day for about 8 hours a day.
Wow. What kind of protective gear or measures did Amazon take starting, let's say, on the 24th and after that?
We didn't have any protective gear. We didn't have no facial mask. We had the gloves that we use, which is worker gloves, but those are not the type of gloves you supposed to have to protect your skin. So we didn't have anything. We didn't have any cleaning supplies. They were very scarce. The cleaning crews, which is a third-party company, they were barely showing up to work because they were scared themselves. Hearing a lot of rumors about people that's testing positive. That would scare anybody, especially when the company's not being transparent. So we were unprotected pretty much. They did have small safety procedures, but they weren't working. Nobody was really enforcing them as far as management. So people were just pretty much doing whatever they wanted to do still, and putting themselves at risk, high risk at that.
So management told you to keep quiet, but you started telling people about it. And then when did it become a walkout? When did you organize that?
Right. So, like I said, I sat in the cafeteria every day telling everybody the truth. I even walked groups of 10 or more into the general manager's office every single day to voice our concerns. I guess they got tired of me doing that. By Saturday, that's when they decided to quarantine only me. None of the employees that were exposed for 10 hours a day. With my colleague who tested positive, by the way, they didn't even inform them that she tested positive. They didn't quarantine none of them. They didn't even quarantine the person that I ride to work with every single day. So that Saturday when they quarantined me and only me, I knew something was wrong, something was fishy. That's when I began to mobilize the walkout, which was held on March 30th. I put together a private group chat on social media. I had some associates that was working in the building over the weekend, passing out notes, photocopying, sort of like a secret Mission Impossible operation. I sent emails out to the CDC, the health department, the government, state of New York. I sent emails out to the media, and I finally got an article published. Now the media was contacting me. So everything came together at the right time. But I had 24 hours to do it, and it came together within that time. That Sunday, I got a lot of good feedback, and then Monday, that's when I mobilized the walkout, approximately around 12:30 p.m.
About how many people walked out?
About 50 to 60 people walked out that day, even though the company downplays it, saying about 15. But you could tell by the pictures and videos, way more people. At least 50 to 60 people walked out. It was very successful.
And then is that when the company fired you?
2 hours later, 2 hours after the protests, I received a phone call saying they terminated me.
And what
Well, I encourage people to make up their own signs all the time. I never want to take that creative aspect from people. The demands we put out in our press release, which are, we want to be protected at all times, PPE provided at all times. There's no excuse for that. Um, we want everybody to be retro paid for all the unpaid time they used during the month of March up until present day. We want the buildings that have cases, especially JFK 8, that have a number of cases to be shut down until um, further notice, and have everybody separated for at least 14 days minimum with pay. Uh, Also, we want transparency and honesty from the company at all times. The amount of cases in these buildings are double digits. We need to know what we're walking into every day. There's no excuse on that as well.
Okay. So the night before the Smalls interview, I interviewed Seth Rosenberg, a train operator and union shop steward in the New York subway system, which has suffered terrible losses due to the virus and lack of appropriate safety measures. So let's talk about subways now.
Okay.
I want to get into that because you're a train operator now. Explain to me, is that like a train engineer or is it different?
Yeah. So the subways, we're only inside New York City. We don't fall under the Railroad Act. So we're not considered a railroad. Unlike some of the, Metro North or Long Island Railroad, which go from the city out into other areas. And so we're considered a subway, and they work very hard to not consider us a railroad because the railroads actually under that act have the power to strike, and we don't. And so I'm considered a subway operator. The subways in New York City, not all of them. There's always an exception. Whatever rule you say in the subways, there's always an exception. But most subways are two-person teams with a train operator in front and then a conductor, usually in the middle. The train operator operates the train, forward and stopping and so forth,
right.
Navigating the signal system and all that. And the conductor opens and closes the doors and is responsible for the announcements.
So how long have you been an operator?
Yeah, so I've been a train operator just over 13 years, and then I was a conductor for a year before that. So it's been about 14 years in the system, but 13 as a train operator. Oh,
so you're a real veteran. So, all right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
We have people with high seniority, so I would probably consider to be a older rookie.
Okay, now I'm in Connecticut, so my last experience with the subway, it was so packed. I was on 42nd Street. I couldn't even get in the car. I had to wait for the next train. I assume it's not like that now.
No, it's been interesting. I'll give you the short story. I think the short story is that regardless of what our governor or Chairman Foy or interim President Feinberg of NYCT, Foy is the chairman of the MTA, regardless of what they say, the numbers do not lie. And what happened is that COVID-19 hit New York City and spread through the subway system, and the MTA was unprepared, did not put their pandemic plan into place, and left transit workers virtually unprotected without even the most basic safety measures. Everything for example, they started to say that they were sanitizing the trains where the passengers sit every 72 hours. With COVID-19, 72 hours is a lifetime. It's, you're going to spread it to so many people during that time. That's just an example. So they say they did something, but in the end, and the number, as I said, the numbers don't lie. We got sick in record numbers, and transit workers died by the dozens.
How many have died? Do you have an estimate of that?
Well, so we have transit workers who are keeping and trying to verify people and keep an accurate track. I was just actually, you and I were discussing that Local 100 Fight Back just did a live stream, and one of the people from buses who's doing that, Danny Cruz, is one of the three people who's keeping track of the numbers, and I think he said it's around 100 right now, and that includes. I'm not one of the people doing it, but it does include. I think that may be active people, but that may also include people from local 100s. It may include ATU and TWU and the supervisor union, because we lost a significant number of supervisors as well. And then people from like some of the private bus and school bus routes. But the numbers, I think, among New York City transit workers who are active, I believe now it's in the 70s. Mm-hmm. So, and we just lost a conductor who a lot of us knew very well, Ben Schaefer. He was a union activist, and he had been an officer. And I'm Jewish and he's Jewish. We had many conversations together. Didn't agree on everything, but yeah, we knew he was on a ventilator for a couple of days, and we just found out today that he passed. And a lot of people, he knew a lot of people, and a lot of people liked him. And,
yeah, that's awful.
Yeah.
What kind of equipment is the MTA giving you now?
Well, it depends. So we are supposed to get one N95 mask a week, and we are supposed to be careful with it and put it in a bag and clean it every day. And then we're supposed to get a certain number of wipes a week. We're supposed to get a pair of like vinyl gloves every day. They've got tons, most of the time, of that goopy hand sanitizer made by New York State. I think it's made by prison labor. At least that's what I've heard. So, I've been able to get my position from the beginning. I wrote a letter to the union after speaking to my superintendent on March 17th, was that, the way the trains work is that you take it up to one end, you get off, someone gets on the other end and gets on in the middle, on the flip side, and then they take the train back. And so you have people using it's like using the same desk. Someone uses a desk for about an hour or an hour and a half, they get up, then someone else sits down on that desk, right? And so if that was the case, if that was in an office and the coronavirus was spreading, you'd think, well, you probably want to spray and wipe down that desk every time someone new uses it, right? That was my demand, and that demand was met with both from my union and from the MTA with silence. And to me, that's one of the main reasons that it spread through our workforce, along with no social distancing plan. So, I think the rule is we're only supposed to get like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 wipes a week. But for me, I'm, to be safe, I'm requesting or taking wipes in order to wipe down my position. I try to use, so we have, our controllers to move the train forward and then the buttons, and our circuit breakers and our seat and our window handles and our door handles. And so I try to wipe those down every time I get on a train. I don't know who was on the train before. I don't know if they sneeze. And they're probably, in the last 24 hours, there's been probably 15 or 20 people in that, touching that same stuff.
Wow, 15 people in that little area where you drive the train.
Obviously not at the same time, but rotating in and out.
Yeah, rotating.
Right, and so to me, to keep myself safe, everything I'm gonna touch in there, I'm gonna wipe down, right? And I think if we had done that from the beginning, if they had been proactive and given us the supplies to do that, a lot less of us would have gotten sick and died.
Yeah, that's something. Now, in terms of passengers, I read something, I think today, that said the passengers were 90% down.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that was that was where you wanted to go with that, right? So basically, they didn't provide us the basic safety stuff. I warned my superintendent and warned the union that our workforce is going to get sick in record numbers, and that's exactly what happened. It spread through transit unlike anyone else, faster than any other group. There were days in the peak there when it was tripling every 2 days. And so what happened is that workers got sick. We couldn't go to work. And then not only that, but there's a ripple effect because people got quarantined. Now, the MTA, I have to tell you, has not been consistent with respect to telling people that they've come into contact with people who have tested positive. Now, they have to some degree, but then I had no other people, constant reports, people saying, oh, this person tested positive. They told me, but the MTA didn't tell me they tested positive, and I was with them a bunch. So people have been getting self-quarantining as well, getting, if they've showed symptoms, they've gotten notes from their doctor, or if they've tested positive, they've been quarantined. And the MTA has quarantined some people, and that led to a ripple effect where so many people were out of work that the MTA couldn't run service, right? And that happened, I think, what was that, towards the end of March? I believe it was towards the end of March. I don't know the exact date. It's all been all blur. But what happened then is the MTA was forced because of their own lack of proactiveness and the effect it had on our workers they just didn't have enough workers to run service, and they had to shut down the sub, which basically say only essential workers can ride the subway, right? And that went along with the shutdown. And so they curtailed service, right, for a long while. They were running only on a Saturday schedule, which is much reduced, and the number of people riding went down as well. But the problem is when you're running less trains and you've got less people riding, then but if you're running less trains, then the trains can still be crowded.
To see the full interviews with Smalls and Rosenberg, go to the YouTube section of thestruggle.org. May 4th is the 50th anniversary of the Kent State Massacre, which took place at Kent State University. It was during the Vietnam War when some Ohio official ordered National Guard soldiers to open fire at a scattering of students after a rally in a field. The nearest victim was over a football field away. No one was ever punished for the 4 murders and the many injuries. Mike Alowitz was a student leader at Kent State and later a world-class muralist and Connecticut professor. He's organizing an online film for Monday, May 4th. It should start around 5 p.m. Check out his Facebook page, Mike Alowitz. He wrote a piece for Counterpunch. It included these paragraphs about what Kent State University itself is doing on Monday. For the day of May 4th, the university has announced plans for an online program of angst-laden, moving visuals and nostalgia. There will be celebrity-studded performances by David Crosby, Graham Nash, Tina Fey, and others. There will be no opposition to the war machine. They want us to look at the bright and shining things. They want us to look away from the current U.S. wars, away from the permanent low-intensity warfare of drones, sanctions, and unending occupations, away from the homelessness and daily suicides of veterans. And now for dumb. At the heart of the epicenter in New York City, some 2,500 people gathered for 2 hours. For 2 hours. And now for dumb. At the heart of the epicenter in New York City, close five. And now for dumb. At the heart of the epicenter of the pandemic in New York City, close to 2,500 people gathered together for 2 hours for a funeral for a rabbi who had died of the coronavirus. The funeral was held for Rabbi Chaim Mertz, 73. Police had broken up a similar march on April 5th for another rabbi who had also died of the virus. Now, Mayor de Blasio of New York was fed up, and he went with police to break up the gathering, and he made a tweet that included these words: My message to the Jewish community and all communities is this simple. The time for warnings has passed. I've instructed the NYPD to proceed immediately to summons or even arrest, and so on. The response of the Anti-Defamation League to the funeral gathering, however, was different. It condemned the mayor for using the word Jewish. ADL leader Greenblatt said the mayor was outrageous and was scapegoating Jews. Now, perhaps the mayor should have used the name of the congregation rather than the word Jewish, but it is no big deal. The big deal was this dangerous gathering which surely spread the virus, dangerous above all to the Jews who were present. But go to the Twitter feed of Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL. He condemns the mayor, but he never condemns a gathering of over 2,000 people in the heart of the virus. Well, here I am with my red shirt for May Day with a sign that says, "Seize the fossil fuel industries, degrowth, rewild, plan a smokestack-free world." 30 million people have lost their jobs in the U.S. 12 million of them have lost their health insurance, which they had through their jobs. We mentioned a couple of weeks ago a picture of some 600 cars in San Antonio lined up for free food. Well, we were wrong. Time magazine estimates 10,000 lined up for that food. And in New Jersey, just outside of Atlantic City, New Jersey, the second richest state in the United States, there was a mile-long line of cars waiting for food. The system is not working. That's our program for today. Stay safe, folks, but stay active. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.